Welcome to this video tutorial, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create your own custom dynamic CSS drop-down menus using nothing but pure CSS, PHP, and MYSQLi. Now this is a preview of the menu that we're going to be creating today, and as you can see, we're using MySQLi to connect and pull data from our database, as all the options on this menu are controlled by the database. So in this example, I'm going to remove this second sub menu from the menu just to show you how it will work. So I'm going to remove them directly, and once I do that and refresh the page, you're going to notice the option on the menu is gone because this is completely handled by the database. So in the same way, if I add another option on the menu, so I'm going to insert another record, and I'm going to insert again sub menu 2 with the parent ID of 0 because it's going to be an option on the main menu, and then I'm going to create a sub item 1, and this is going to appear as a sub menu to this. So let's just click on go, come back and browse the table, and as you're going to see, it's created 2 new records in our table. Now the first thing that I have to explain here is we have an ID column, name column, and parent ID. So the parent ID column contains the ID of the item on the menu that it should be a sub item to. So in other words, this is the main option on the menu, and sub item 1 should be a sub menu to this. Now submenu 2 has an ID of 11, so the parent ID of sub item 1 is going to be 11. Now if I refresh the page, as you can see, it appears just as we programmed it to do so in the database. And this is just a simple preview of what we'll be creating today in this tutorial. And again, this is a MySQLi tutorial. In preparation of this video tutorial, I've gone ahead and created this website template, which we're going to be using as an example to not only create our CSS drop-down menus, but also use MySQLi so that we can not only connect to our database, but so we can also run queries so that the items on the menu are being pulled in dynamically from the database. And this is a great thing to learn if you're building content management systems or applications where you want an admin to create and edit pages on their website. So before we actually begin, I'm just going to show you the table in my database I've created. It's very simple, so I'm just going to come over to structure. Of course, we've got an ID column which is auto incrementing. I've got a name column, and this is of course going to have the name of the menu item. So for example, home, about, and of course we've got parent ID, and this is going to handle the drop-down menus so that any item or should I say field in this database table that has a parent ID with the value of another field will actually return as a submenu of that parent field. Now if that doesn't make sense to you right now, then let's come over to browse. I've inserted some initial fields into the database table just to basically get us started. As you can see, I've got basically some items here. So we've got home, submenu 1, about, and contact. And these all have the parent ID of 0 because these are not going to be submenus. However, we've got sub item 1, sub item 2, and 3, and these all have the parent ID of 3. And if we look, submenu 1, it has the ID of 3. So this is going to be the item on the menu which has a submenu, and all these items are going to be items on that submenu. Now if that doesn't make sense to you right now, then bear with us, and as you follow along with this video tutorial, I'm sure it's going to be very clear for you. Alright, so let's get started with writing the PHP. So I'm going to come over to my files panel, and I'm going to create a new file, and we're just going to call this menu.php. Now if I open this up, This is going to contain the PHP, the functions, and we're simply going to call that function on whatever page we want to display the menu. Again, if it's not clear to you now, don't worry, by the end of this tutorial it's going to make sense to you. So let's come into code view. Now this is just going to contain PHP and nothing else. So I'm just going to delete everything here. This all the default code on the page, just going to remove it. First thing we need to do is create our opening PHP tag. Now as I said, this is just going to contain PHP, so we don't even need to create a closing PHP tag. Okay, so now we just need to create our first function, which is just going to loop the array. So let's create our first function, and in here we're going to pass two parameters. The first one is going to be array, which is just going to equal the array, and then we're going to create a parent ID, just going to equal to 0. And then here we're going to create an if statement. So we're going to say if, and in here we need to check if there are any items. So we're going to say empty, and then here, so we'll say array, and we'll put in our parent ID. Okay, so what we want to do here is I'm going to do this in stages. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to echo various different HTML elements for our unordered list. So for example here, I'm just going to copy this to save some time. So the first thing we want to echo is our opening UL tag. The second thing we want to echo is our opening LI tag, which is basically, so UL stands for unordered list, LI stands for list item. And then of course we want to echo our closing list item or LI tag, so we just have to put it, and then we want to close this, so we're going to say we want to add our closing UL tag, other words unordered list. Okay, so the first thing we want to do here is we want to say for each, and then it's array parent ID as items, and then after our opening li tag we want to echo items, and it's the name column from the database, and then we just want to loop the array, and then here we just say array items ID, and then after our closing li tag we'll close it, and that's it for our first function. So if we just get rid of the spaces and save it, we can write the second function. Okay, so we're now ready to create our second function, which isn't actually going to have any arguments, but it is going to be where we it is going to contain our query, and it's also going to be where we loop everything out. So let's go ahead and create our function, and we're going to call this function display menus. And again, inside this function, the first thing we need to do is actually create our connection. So I'm going to create a variable called con, basically stands for connection, and here we're just going to say MYSQLi underscore connect, and it's just going to contain all of our credentials here. So obviously this is going to be different for everyone. Obviously I'm on my testing server, so I'm just going to enter my localhost. What do I keep writing location, I don't know. Localhost root. I don't have a password because it's just my testing server, and then this is siteeasy underscore tut underscore comment system. Now just to explain this, this is my testing server, so my host is localhost. I just installed my testing server at default, so my username is root. I don't have a password because, as I said, it's just my testing server. You only need a password when you actually upload this remotely for security. And of course, my database, this is my database name. And I created this database for various tutorials, and that's what I called it. So that's the database. So here you enter your host, username, password, and your database. And you're going to need to change this to contain your remote information when you actually upload this online. So you just need to enter your MySQLi, your MySQL information credentials here. Okay, now let's create a query. So I'm going to create another variable called query, and this is going to contain our query. So here we're going to call the con variable, which stands for connection, as you know. And here, this is where we're going to enter our query. So I'm just going to enter select all from and my table name, which is menus. So I'm just going to save that. And then finally, we just need to create an array. So I'm just going to say array equals array, and that's it. Okay, so now we just need to create an if statement. So I'm just going to say if, and basically the condition here is we're just going to say MySQLi num rows, and it's going to be our query. And then in here we need to create a while loop. Okay, and in here we're just going to set it to create a variable called rows. You can call it whatever you want, and we're just going to say equal MySQLi fetch array, and put in our query. And then our rows variable with the parent ID, and then here we'll just equal rows. And then finally, we just need to loop the array. So here I'm just going to call the array. Okay, so that's it. But I can see I have two syntax errors. So I'm just going to fix those. First one I can see is really simple, just left out query here. And there's nothing wrong here, so suggests something's missing here. Yeah, well, one of the first things I did, I forgot to loop the array. Other than that, this is fine. Okay, so now that we've written the PHP and we've written our functions or query, we're ready to require this and call this function on the page. In other words, to display the menu. Now what I did was I separated, if you remember, I created this template here, and I separated the template from our PHP, and that's just good practice. It just, we're creating a cleaner code, and again, it's kind of like, if someone comes along and wants to edit your website, keeping everything nice and neat and labeled, should I say, makes it easier for you to come back and edit this down the line, whether it's you or someone else. So we're keeping our menu function, our PHP, in a separate file, which is all going to be clearly labeled, etc. And yeah, it's just the way I like to do things, but it's really up to you. You could just place this PHP at the top of your document here, and it wouldn't make any difference. But when you are developing pages, sometimes it can become quite lengthy, and keeping everything separate can sometimes help, just in terms of keeping everything nice and neat. But it's really up to you. Now let's return to this, because what I'm now going to show you is, now that we've written the PHP, I'm going to show you how to actually incorporate this into your actual pages. So we need to basically call the function, but before we can call the function, we need to kind of connect and bridge these two documents, which is really easy. So I'm coming to my template. I want to put my menu in this div I've already created here. So all I have to do is come into code view, and on line 1, I'm just going to require the PHP file. So I'm just going to say require, and it's literally as easy as this. So it's called menu.php, and as you can see, I can now, edit this file from my main template because I've called the script from this document. So that's really cool. Now what I need to do is actually call the function where I want it to appear. So I want this menu to appear in this div here. So I'm going to come into code view, and as you can see here, I've got this div which is called menu. I created to contain my menu. So here I'm just going to create another pair of opening and closing PHP tags. So all we need to do is just call the function. So if you remember in our PHP file here, we created, this is a function that contains our query, and it's just called display menus. Remember, I said you can call it anything you want. So this is our function. So we just need to take the name of the function, come back into our document, and again here, this is our the place where we want to display the menu. As you can see, I've already created the PHP tag, so it's displaying as there's a script there. And between these PHP tags we just created, we just need to insert that. Okay, so as you can see now, we're calling the function that we've created, and we've required our PHP script, which is here. So if we come into design view, you're going to see it's just appearing in our browser as a script. So what we want to do now is let's launch this in Firefox and let's see what we've got. So there you go. I can tell you for certain it's working. And the only thing now that remains is the CSS that is actually going to style the menu. Now I may have said previously, what we're writing is the HTML part of the menu, because CSS menus are, now the reason that CSS menus are so effective is because they're pure CSS, they're pure code. There are lots of different ways to develop menus. And some of the older methods, developers would create images and then set background images for certain CSS properties, etc. And because a web browser has to load that image, it's going to affect the load time of that browser, which is of course an issue. Now what we're doing here is we're not doing that. What we're doing is we're using pure CSS to style our menu, which means it's pure code. So when a web browser tries to load that, it's going to load it very, very quickly because it's just loading and rendering out code. Now, to build a CSS menu, the first thing you need is the HTML. In other words, you need an unordered list. Okay, so that's what we've created here. And as you can see, this is a more complicated version than if you were just building a static menu with set options. Because as I mentioned previously, we have a database. And we're not only creating a database to show a single level menu, we're also having submenus. And you can see that's exactly what we've done here. We've created submenus. So we have submenu 1, 2, 3, and it's all, of course, it's ordered as well, which is very important. Now there's an additional step involved here, and that's actually the CSS factor. Because to create a CSS menu, as I said, you create an unordered list, and then you use CSS to target that unordered list to actually style it. And that's the next step of this tutorial, which I'm going to show you how to do. Now to do that, I'm going to be incorporating CSS menu creator into this tutorial. Again, it's cssmenucreator.com. There'll be a direct link in the description of this video. Alternatively, you can just type in the direct URL. But what we want to do here is we want to use this application to actually build write the CSS. So you can come to the site, and of course you can browse the menus, and once you find one that you want to use, select build menu. And of course, if you browse here, you're going to see that it literally writes the code for you. So for example, here's your responsive menu, and here's your standard CSS menu. And of course, you can use the application to build a static menu. We've already got the HTML part of this done. We've done that with PHP, and we're doing that via the database. But what we want is the CSS that will basically style our menu. So this is the CSS, and I'm just going to take this CSS and I'm going to copy it. So right click copy. And if we come back to Dreamweaver, this is my my template here. This is my web page. We're going to go to code view, and between my head tag, so here's my opening head tag, here's my closing head tag. Before my closing head tag, I'm just going to literally paste the code that I just took from CSS Menu Creator. Now we're not doing the responsive menu, so I'm going to get rid of the responsive media queries. Okay, so I've just copied the CSS from CSS Menu Creator, so I'm just going to launch this again in Firefox. And you're going to see that although we have copied the CSS, it hasn't actually changed anything on our page. And you may be wondering why. Well, the answer is very simple. Let's come back over to CSS Menu Creator, and let's just look at the HTML, because the first thing I want to explain is CSS Menu Creator is initially designed for static menus, but it writes all the code for you. So for example, if I add a link to the menu here, you're going to see that it actually changes the HTML, and it writes the HTML in addition to writing the CSS, and in addition to giving you the responsive menu. But what we're doing here is we're actually generating the HTML with our PHP script, because we're actually pulling this in and this data in using MYSQLi in a database. A pure CSS menu like this, it's running off of pure code, so of course it's going to load instantaneously, which is of course the advantage. However, when you are using CSS, you target specific elements on a page, you target specific rules. Now if we look at the HTML here and we look at the CSS, we're going to notice that first of all, the navigation, the menu, the URL, the unordered list is wrapped in a div type with the ID of menu. In addition, the unordered list has a class for CSS menu. And if we look at the CSS which we copied, it's first looking for nav, which is a HTML5 element. It's also then looking at the UL tag, which is a class of CSS menu, before it has any of these properties. So what we need to do is modify our code slightly. So I'm going to come back to Dreamweaver, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove nav, which is a HTML5 element from our CSS. So I'm literally just going to run through all the code and remove this element. Now if I come back here, you're going to see that this is where I'm actually putting in my CSS menu. This is my script where I'm calling the function. So I'm going to come back into code view. This is the div that contains my menu, and I'm going to wrap this in the div which the CSS is targeting. So I'm going to give this div the ID of menu, and then I'll just wrap my PHP around the div. So come back into design view. The first thing you're going to notice is that this div has a margin from on the top and bottom. So I'm just going to come back to my code, come back up to the top. It's my menu. Going to remove the margin. Let's save that. Now let's come back here. The final thing we need to do is come back into our PHP, and where we're echoing the opening UL tag, so the opening unordered list tag, we're going to add a class. And this is CSS menu, which is what our CSS is calling and targeting. And finally, I'm just going to add a style here, and I'm going to set the color of the text on the menu to white. You can change it to anything you like. So let's come back to design view, and let's go into Firefox. And as you can see, the menu is now loading beautifully on our page. And if you look at the database, so I'm just going to pull these up side by side. So I've basically pulled these up side by side, and this is of course the menu. And if we look at the database here, so we've got home, submenu 1, about and contact. So we've got home, submenu 1, about and contact, and then of course submenu 1 has submenu items 1, 2, and 3, and they appear here. So let's add another item. Of course, we're going to have to do that in the database. So I'm just going to go to insert, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert something in at the end of it. Let's say submenu 2, and I'm just going to enter 0 because it's going to be an item on the menu. And then I'm going to insert another submenu item, so submenu item, or let's just say sub item 1. And if I actually just press go here, and let's come back to browse, so submenu 2 has the ID of 9. So for this submenu item, we're going to enter 9. Let's come back and let's refresh this. You're going to see that we get submenu item, submenu 2, and if we run our cursor, of course, sub item 1. So this is how you do it. It's coming in from a database, pure CSS menu, and of course you can just develop a simple admin application that will insert, update, delete items from this database table. And of course, once you manipulate the database, that will just be reflected in your CSS menu. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. I'd just like to encourage you to visit our official community website, simpletut.com. This is where we post all of our tutorials, including that on web development, computing, and even photography, but much more. Some of our most popular tutorials include building a MySQLi user registration system, but we also have PHP classes. I've shown you in videos how to develop your own responsive website layouts, content management systems. There's tutorials on social networking, e-commerce, and much more. But this is a fantastic learning resource, and it does not stop there. We also have a Ask a Question area on our website where you can post a question about this or any other tutorial, or perhaps even a project of your own. We also have a blog and a freebies section which you can use to access even more content. Now, before you go, I'd just like to encourage you to actually like our Facebook page, because this is a fantastic way for you to stay in contact with us. As we release new freebies, new tutorials, we will post them on our Facebook page, and you can even make suggestions for future tutorials all on our Facebook page. But before you go, I would just like to encourage you to check out one of our latest projects, cssmenucreator.com. Now, this is a fantastic resource for you. It cuts your development time and makes building websites even easier, because what it does is it writes the code for you when it comes to CSS menus. You can select from our growing range of pre-built CSS menus, use the built-in application to actually build your menu and create your different options for your menu, and then you can actually install that menu on your own website within Dreamweaver or whatever web application you're using to build your website. You just simply copy and paste the code into the website, and we have video tutorials show you how to do it on a step-by-step basis. I would just like to say that if you would like to make a contribution to our project, then we really would appreciate it. There is a donation button on simpletut.com which you can use to make a contribution to a project. This is also a great opportunity for me to tell you about our official website, siteeasy.com, and there'll be a link in the description of this video. This is where we sell a huge range of pre-built websites and scripts and offer custom web design services. Some of our pre-built websites include a pre-built social networking website, e-commerce, content management. These all include free installations, and we offer much more, such as property listings or file upload. So it's a great resource for anyone looking for a one-stop solution for your project. We also offer a number of pre-built PHP scripts, which is growing all the time. And these are applications which you can incorporate into your website, such as the pre-built user registration system, digital goods for PayPal, billing systems, comment systems, contact forms, and much more. And all of these scripts can be incorporated into your existing website. They're completely pre-built, and you can simply copy and paste them and upload them to your server immediately once you've downloaded them. If you do have any questions, would like to get in touch, perhaps have a custom job, web development project you'd like us to help you with, then please get in touch using any of our websites. We have contact forms on all of our websites. You can contact us via Facebook. Again, I'd also like to recommend that you like, comment, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Once again, thank you very much for watching this video. Have a great day.